I have a bone to pick, both with the crowd that advocates for the normalization of prostitution, specifically the many casual supporters of a normalized sex trade, who like to trot out cases of women making four-digit sums a night as proof that the sex industry is safe, freely chosen, and a fantastic deal for women. But this bone I'm intending to pick extends to people in my own camp. Yes, I am talking to every single person below, past me, whoever goes around arguing that prostitution is horrible for 99% of women. But that 1% at the top, well, those are just some greedy patriarchy collaborators throwing us all under the bus for some Gucci bags. You're both wrong. So-called high-class prostitution with no pimp and lots of choice to pick among the customers is still dangerous. And no woman in the sex trade can ever rightly be referred to as safe as an office clerk and as privileged as a CEO. The only way to be safer in prostitution is to meet fewer men, which indeed women who are at the upper end of the industry are more likely to be able to do. But those few powerful men still pose considerable danger. Here's why. The men who pay four-digit sums. Ever wondered why someone would pay $1,000? Ever wondered why someone would pay $1,000 when he could have the same thing in the poor part of town for 50, 20, 10 bucks? It's because of his inflated ego, which tends to go hand in hand with extreme sexual entitlement. He pays more because he thinks that he is fancy and worth it, not her. He pays four digits because he deserves the best treatment all night long, or however long he pleases, and he wants anything he might feel like. The superficial glamour is so that he doesn't feel the dirt of the streets. It's not to do her a favor. Many of these rich men pay to have a woman for a whole night, or even accompanying him on a business trip or vacation, which means she has to put on the act that everything he says and does is amazing, brilliant, sexy, incredible, for hours and hours or days. Many women describe how harrowing this is and how much it makes you dissociate from yourself, not even getting into risky, disgusting, or painful sexual demands that may well come your way, and the remaining fear of STDs and injury. Here's a quote from one woman who was in high-class prostitution. Gwyneth Montenegro says, "The more money that you charge, the more you are expected to do. The same rules that apply to everyone else don't necessarily apply at the high end. Most people think it is because you're attractive and have a good physique. They think that men are lining up to give you money, but the reality is a little different. You're often expected to do what other escorts won't do, to push the boundaries of taste, to push the boundaries of protection, to push the boundaries of personal security. To be clear, the women at the very bottom of the hierarchy are treated as absolute dirt by men, and thus also endure anything he might feel like, no matter how vile or dangerous. And they endure it more often than the women at the top. What I'm trying to say is that all forms of prostitution are based in male sexual entitlement, and that this doesn't stop at a certain pay grade. And finally, there is the additional threat of violence on top of the undesired sexual contact. See for yourselves. I have a list of cases on my blog. You can find all the sources there. This list is obviously vastly incomplete. It's just some examples of what happens to women at the high end. 1991, UK. An unknown killer murders Sharon Hoare, 19, in her luxury flat. Hoare was making up to £500 per buyer. 1996, US. Jack Nicholson promises $1,000 to Catherine Sheehan to be available to him for a night at his hotel. When she asks for payment, he shouts that he could have sex with anyone and refuses to pay. He proceeds to beat her senseless until she has to be hospitalized and nearly loses her sight. The same year, Nicholson injures another woman so badly her breast implants rupture. 2007, UK. George Allen O'Dowd, aka Boy George, 46, hires male escort Auden Carlson, 28, for £400 a night. They both take drugs, which send O'Dowd into a rage. He proceeds to handcuff, threaten, and then beat up Carlson, who barely manages to escape. 2011 Germany. An anonymous man, 50, books a woman for €460 and is dissatisfied with her service as she shows displeasure at him touching her and doesn't comply with all of his requests. When she wants to leave, he starts strangling her, which she barely survives. 2014 Switzerland. Robert S., 49, ex-banker, meets up with Justina P., 25, at a luxury hotel, where he beats and strangles her to death. His motive before court was that he was in love with Justina, and she refused to see him without payment. 2014 UK. Robert Richard Fraser, 40, banker, bludgeons escort Maria Duke Tunjano, 48, to death. He had previously attacked and threatened to kill another woman in prostitution. 2016 UK. Peter Morgan, 52, millionaire businessman, started seeing escorts during his midlife crisis. He strangles and murders Georgina Simmons, 25, and dumps her body in his barn. 2017 Nigeria. Bala Chinda, 26, son of an ambassador, hires high-class escort Jessica McGraw, 37. They argue over payments, which he uses as a justification to rape and murder her. 2018 Germany. K. Oliver P., 44, and K.S., 50, book Anna R., 26, for €500, and spent 9 hours raping and torturing her. 2018 UK. Zahid Nassim, 47, banker, was a regular of Christina Abbott's, 29, who would make £2,500 per night, until he beat her around the head 13 times and then strangled her and left her to die. 2018 Germany. Jan Ulrich, former Tour de France champion, hires an escort, 31, Congolese, to his hotel and proceeds to strangle and beat her, attempting to rape her. He is let go with a mere fine. 2018 South Korea. Lee Seung-hyun, aka Sungri, 28, K-pop superstar, is charged both with pimping, sex buying, drugging, filming, and raping women. He would pay women in prostitution up to $4,800 for a single night. 2020 US. Manish Gupta, 49, plastic surgeon, drugs and rapes high-end escort and several other women. He is caught because he filmed his crimes, and the evidence fell into an employee's hands. And finally, he fits into almost every lineup of misogynists. Donald Trump is someone who pays for the more expensive side of prostitution. Superficially glamorous. Hollow, pathetic, and violent. In practice, is he. Right? And he has documented history of violence against women and girls. And pimping in his, ancestry. Right? Again, this list is obviously extremely incomplete and only covers cases that came to light due to women ending up dead or being able to go to the police where they were believed and taken seriously. That's not a given. And it doesn't matter if you're high-end. It also doesn't include all those that died of illness, suicide, or overdose as a more indirect consequence of male violence. And all those can affect women at the top. We don't know how many women really suffered or died at the hands of powerful sex buyers. The list is likely too long to count, and some of the most prominent names will never come to light. But we're not done here. I really want to make the point that a woman may well look like she's doing well in the sex trade, but if you're quick to celebrate or judge, you likely don't know half her story. So here's a more in-depth look at one relevant story about the most famous woman in German prostitution of the last 70 years. The woman who made 7 times the national average income. It's the 1950s. Rosemarie Nitribit is in her early 20s. She's beautiful, curvaceous, funny, knows how to charm her way through the entire German establishment, living or traveling through Frankfurt. She's at their parties, mingling with the powerful and the intelligentsia, catching the eyes and receiving the love letter of many a millionaire's heir. She's widely adored, darling of the men of the nation. Rosemarie is feisty, clever, and shrewd. She's got money and she knows how to make more. She's got a luxury apartment, an adorable dog, the latest fashion, and she's driving a Mercedes 190 SL, the chicest car around. Cruising through Frankfurt, she stops in front of hotels or wherever else rich men come and go, and picks them up as she likes and chooses. When business is done, she drops them off again. She's in control. There's no one taking her money, not for lack of trying, but she's nobody's puppet. In 1954, she's making 7 times the amount of the average German citizen. You all would have called Rosa Marie a sex work success story, or a privileged patriarchal monkey, if she was alive today. Right? She's a textbook case, happy hooker, celebrated by the sexual revolutionaries for her daring and powerful control of so many men. Proof that if you just have the right amount of smarts and sex appeal, you can have it all. Abhorred by those who hate women in prostitution, including those who purport to be their allies until they make too much money or look too happy in photos. You know where this is going. I'm not going to tell you everything you don't know about Rosa Marie. At age 3, Rosa Marie is separated from her mother, who is a woman in prostitution, as was her grandmother, both having had their first pregnancies as teenagers, both abandoned by the fathers and having to fend for themselves. Rosa Marie's mother is repeatedly put into prison and designated as unfit to take care of her children. At age 11, Rosa Marie, now in the care of a foster family, is raped by an 18-year-old man living in the same village. The rapist is never punished, and the adults in her life declare speaking of the crime a taboo. The trauma of the rape makes Rosa Marie behave in a hypersexual manner, which makes her extremely vulnerable to predatory men. At age 14, Rosa Marie is groomed by 2 adult women in prostitution who seize the opportunity to make money and repeatedly pimp her out to French and American soldiers stationed in the area. At age 14, Rosa Marie becomes pregnant and has an illegal abortion, which nearly kills her. She is repeatedly institutionalized, hospitalized, and imprisoned for strong tendency to sexual debauchery and indiscriminate involvement with men. Repeatedly, she escapes. At age 18, Rosa Marie is registered and jailed by police for engaging in prostitution in Frankfurt. 2 years later, she is declared a hopeless case and prematurely becomes a legal adult. In the Germany of the 1950s, you become an adult at 21. The state absolves itself of all responsibility towards her. Now aged 20, Rosa Marie gets her own apartment in Frankfurt and tries to escape prostitution on her own. Her attempts at finding ordinary work fail. She tries to make the best of a bad situation and works her way up the ladder. Within only a year, she arrives at the situation described at the outset, the zenith of what prostitution has to offer. What you don't know is that Rosa Marie is seeing 7 to 8 men a day, same as the many impoverished Romanian and Bulgarian women in German prostitution today who are barely scraping by. Let's be honest, the prospect of 7 to 8 different sex partners a day is off-putting, including to those of us who love sex. That's 7 to 8 unpredictable male strangers a day. Say what you want about picking them from your car, you don't know what he's like till the door closes behind you. What you don't know is that men dehumanize Rosa Marie by routinely taking pornographic photos of her during or after paying for it, sharing them around like trophies. Like she's a collector's item, a widespread practice among sex buyers today, who make whole albums labeled "Whores I Fucked, Asses Still Asking For It," and the like. Rosa Marie is a status symbol for rich men, but she's decidedly not an equal participant. In late October 1957, Rosa Marie is murdered in her own apartment by an unknown killer. She's only 24 years old at the time. Police almost instantly make public statements that they're not suspecting rich and established customers. These serious men didn't have to kill the girl, who had gifted them so much joy. That would have been ungrateful. That's a quote. Tax collectors come to take their piece and confiscate nearly half of the money Rosa Marie left to her mother. I'm going to show you some of the men who were sex buyers of Rosa Marie. So the first one is Harald von Bohlen und Heilbach, millionaire's heir. Most of these are heirs of industrial giants. Next one, Harald Quandt, same thing. Gunther Sachs, also industrial giant's heir and self-styled playboy. Ernst Wilhelm Sachs, that's the brother of the guy before, Fritz Huschke von Hanstein. This guy is a straight-up Nazi, because a lot of Nazis remained in power. I mean, they were the bureaucracy of the country. They weren't all removed at once. Many were never removed. This guy was in the SS, and he was still out to have a career after, right? So he was a race driver post-war, and they still let him move in the highest circles. No excommunication for crimes against humanity for this guy. There was Joey Savinaw, a jazz musician. And then there's rumors that really, like, the highest, the very top of the political establishment moved in the same circles as Rosa Marie, and she was likely one of their trophies. So there's Ludwig Erhard, former chancellor, Gustav Heinemann, former president, and Kurt Georg Kiesinger, also a former chancellor. In the following weeks and months, police intentionally destroy evidence in order to not have to investigate the powerful men who were sex buyers seeing Rosa Marie. They also separate her head from her body to study the injuries and keep it under lock and key, forcing her family and friends to bury her without it. After repeated requests, it is returned 50 years later. Something similar was done to Cindy Gladue, an Indigenous woman in Canada, also murdered in prostitution. This was just a few years ago. They removed her genitalia from her body as evidence, and she was murdered by a sex buyer who didn't get any punishment because he said she consented to the injuries that made her bleed to death from her vagina. Yeah. In 1968, 10 years after her death, forgers make a cruel joke of Rosa Marie's murder and print fake stamps depicting it, claiming to raise money to pay for the care of her grave. They call her murder an occupational accident. Later, her life and death will be profited from by a variety of filmmakers, TV producers, and one musical director. Because murder is the stuff of musicals, right? And rape and abuse, which is great. I want to take a moment here and tell you a few more things about Rosa Marie, because I don't just want her remembered for having been in prostitution. Rosa Marie Nietrebet was highly intelligent, despite having been labeled a failure from the start and repeatedly throughout her life. She learned French and English during her final years. She had a sister and a mother who loved her, as well as friends and her dog Joey. She was a real person. What I'm asking you to take away from this is to think and research first before you self-assuredly assert that this or that individual woman or group of women in the sex trade is fine and dandy, has made it, is safe and privileged. So she either constitutes the beacon of a hopeful sexually liberated future or the handmaid meant to overcome while you march on towards the big patriarchal boss. You don't know her story. You don't know what she endured to get to where she is. You don't know if she'll be alive next week, next month, next year. It just takes one violent man. And she's more likely to meet such a man than most other people in society. The assumption that being paid by powerful men would make her safer because she can always threaten them with being outed as sex buyers and cheats. You've forgotten the fact that they run the state and can make her pay for it dearly, possibly with her life. And also that this option of hers would disappear entirely if you succeed in fully destigmatizing the men who pay, which is the current trajectory of, the pro-decrim movement. Not everyone in that movement, but, the mainstream and most of the casual supporters. I'm not saying this is every woman's story, though there are many like Rosa Marie's, just not as famous. Just that you never know what's truly going on behind a woman beaming at you or licking her lips through a prostitution ad. What you do know is why men pay for it, because it is easy, instant sexual access to a body and to sex acts, just as he likes it, with little to no obligations towards the woman, for which there is no tragic backstory justification to be made on his part. And she doesn't owe you one either, just to be clear. So why not turn your critical eye and your judgment on him instead?